Hi, this is Dan, and today I'm going to make andouille sausage. So we're going to talk about the equipment you're going to need first. You're going to need a meat grinder. You can use a standard KitchenAid attachment meat grinder, but once you get into making a lot of sausage, you're probably going to want a dedicated meat grinder because you certainly don't want to burn out the motor in your favorite kitchen utensil here. So I bought myself on Amazon, spent about $90 on this. Works like a charm. And of course your stand mixer. And then if you're going to make smoked links, you're going to need a smoker. I have a charcoal bullet smoker, but if you're comfortable with a gas smoker, that's perfectly good too. So you're going to obviously need a good chef's knife. This is a nice one that my girlfriend got me as a kit to make. Love it. And then I also use a spice grinder for all of my hard allspice, cloves, pepper, obviously things like that. So you get a lot more of the oils in than using ground, but you can certainly use ground too. Okay, so let's talk about the recipe a little bit. We're going to start off with 3 yellow onions, small, or 2 medium ones. I'm going to use 10 cloves of garlic. I'm going to use 2 tablespoons of peanut oil. The meat, 5 pounds of sausage is what I'm making today. You're going to want about a 2-to-1 fat to meat ratio here. So this is a nicely marbled pork shoulder. It's 4 pounds there, and I'm guessing that's about 3 pounds of meat and 1 pound of fat in there. So to that 4 pounds of well marbled pork shoulder, I am adding in a pound of pork belly to make my 5 pounds and try to give me about that 2.5 to 1 meat to fat ratio. Cayenne pepper. Get yourself a good cayenne pepper. I like Zatarain's. I'm going to be using 1.5 teaspoons of that. And then let me talk about the spicing for a second. Remember, it's always easier to add in spicing than to run out to the butcher shop to buy more meat, which we have done in the past. That's no fun. So it's always easier to add it in than to take it out. So if there's, I'm starting with a baseline, my baseline recipe. If you're don't like too hot, you can dial it down. If you're worried about being salty, you can dial it down. But as I said, you can always add in more. It's tough to take it away. So again, I'm going to start with 1.5 teaspoons of my cayenne pepper. I'm going to start with a 1/2 teaspoon of cloves, 1 teaspoon of mustard powder, 2 teaspoons of thyme, 1/4 teaspoon of allspice, paprika. This is genuine Hungarian paprika. Most paprika you find in the stores is going to be Hungarian style, not going to be made in Hungary. I really recommend you go with this. The flavor is unbelievable and much different than what you're going to find in American paprikas. I get it on Amazon, but you're going to want to use less of it in all your recipes that call for paprika because it's very, very strong. So I'm going to start with 1.5 tablespoons of this. In a normal paprika that you buy in the grocery store, I'd probably start with 2 tablespoons. 2 tablespoons of kosher salt. 1/2 cup of beer or wine. I'm using a homebrew that I made. Came out really nice. It's American ale. Again, my awesome girlfriend got me that kit. Okay, now we're going to move on to what you're going to need. That's everything you would need if you were going to make bulk sausage for patties or for crumbling into soups, things like that. But we're going to make a traditional smoked link andouille sausage. So we're going to need hog casings, 25 feet of hog casings, smoking wood. I'm using hickory and sugar cane. There's a big debate from the guys down in New Orleans what the right wood to use for andouille sausage is, but it seemed to be divided between hickory and sugarcane, so I said, why not go 50-50? 1/3 cup of powdered milk. What this is going to do is this is going to expand as you smoke it. And the milk fats are going to take up some of the voids. So that way when you chill it down, it won't wrinkle up like so many smoked sausages get. So when you chill it, you should have a more uniform, nice looking sausage at the end. And lastly, let's talk about this. That is prog powder or Instacure, number 1. Don't use number 2 for this recipe, you have to use number 1. Number 2 is for cold smoking, like your, or cold curing, like your salamis and things like that. Number 1 is for your hot smoking. Now, you have to have it to smoke safely. I'm going to be using 1 1/4 teaspoons of that. Just be aware, it is poisonous if eaten as salt. So you want to keep that away from your food, keep it somewhere where people won't get at it, you won't mistakenly think, oh, this is pink Himalayan sea salt, I'm going to throw it on my food, and then you're rushing to the ER. So, you have to have it to cure, and don't worry about using it. Nitrates have been being used to cure sausage since before the Romans, so it's natural, but just beware that you need to keep it away from anyone that might accidentally get into it and try to use the salt. I think that about covers my ingredients, so let's get started. Okay, so I'm cutting the meat up in about 2-inch cubes. One thing you can do, I'm going to make a smooth sausage, but if you want to make a country style sausage, which andouille traditionally is, take about 1/4 of your meat roughly and 1/4 of your fat and hand dice it. You want it fairly small so the Instacure can do its job when you're smoking, but it'll give you a little bit more of that country mouthfeel. I'm going to be having a very smooth sausage because I'm going to blend it after I grind it. But even after we do that, if you have some visible chunks of meat in there, you'll get that more country mouthfeel. I personally like my andouille to be smooth because I usually make it for gumbo. And my girlfriend likes me to just grill one up sometimes and eat it like a hot dog. So I like a more smooth sausage, but if you want to, take about 1/4 of your fat, 1/4 of your meat, hand dice it, and then put it into the bowl after we grind.
Is it ready yet?
What's that?
Is it ready yet?
It is not, baby, but I am working on it.
What?
I love this thing. I said, look how that knife cuts. I love this thing. I mean, it just saws through, goes through a, 6-inch thick piece of pork like butter.
pretty sure more of that ended up on the counter.
More ended up on the counter than my grinder? Okay, so now that we've got the onion diced pretty fine and the garlic minced, I'm going to saute them. Now I'm not just going for a wilt. 2 tablespoons of peanut oil should do it. I'm not just going for a wilt. I want them actually caramelized, the onions especially, because with the flavor of the andouille, the caramelizing of the onions just really, really pops. So go all the way to fairly well browned, not burnt with the onions obviously, and then I usually like to add in the garlic towards the end, just to take some of the edge off the garlic, cook it just a little bit. I love garlic, but I don't like biting into raw garlic. So, you know, feel free to put that straight in your sausage if you want, but I like to cook mine a little bit, but definitely caramelize the onions.
Go.
Okay, so when I get to this point where they're starting to brown and I figure I'm a couple minutes away from being done, then I'll add in my garlic. Again, that's 10 cloves minced pretty fine. Okay, now that we got the meat cubed, the onions and garlic sauteed, and our spice mix made, again that's 2 tablespoons of kosher salt, that is 1 tablespoon of paprika, 1.5 teaspoons of cayenne, a teaspoon of mustard, 2 teaspoons of dried thyme, a 1/4 teaspoon of allspice, and 1/2 teaspoon of cloves, and then of course because I am smoking this sausage, I added in the 1/4 cup of dried milk and the 1 1/4 teaspoons of Instacure #1. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stir this into the meat. Most people will add their seasonings after they grind, but I find if you add the seasonings in before you chill your meat to grind, then it grinds the seasonings into the meat, really makes it part of the sausage. It really incorporates it better, I think. If you're more comfortable adding in the blending stage, adding it with your hands, that's fine after the grind. But I really like to put the spices into my meat before the grind, before the chill. Make sure you get it all nice and coated. All the bits coated with some spice, because you make sure it's all nice and distributed through your sausage. You don't have any less spiced links. And then when you go to grind it, you want to make sure to, you know, grab one of your pieces of your pork belly every 3 or 4 meat pieces, so you're not ending up just, you know, a bunch of areas of the grind that is all meat and a bunch that's all fat. You want to distribute that through. And again, after I get this nicely incorporated, I'm going to pop it in the freezer. You're going to want to bring it down to at least, at most, however you want to think about it, 35 degrees. Because when you grind, you want to make sure that the fat doesn't melt. You want the fat to stay in chunks. That's what makes sausage. If the fat melts, then you just get, you know, gooey meat. You want the fat to stay in chunks throughout the grind and throughout the stuffing. So we're going to freeze this down to at least 35. We're going to grind it, and then we're going to refreeze it after that down to at least 35 before we stuff it. So I think that looks pretty good for now. So we'll go into the freezer. All right, it's been in the freezer for about an hour now, and checking it out, and 34 degrees, so perfect. I probably should have mentioned in the what equipment you'll need section that a food thermometer, but I'm assuming that anyone tackling making their own andouille sausage probably has one. So now we're going to grind it. Again, just make sure every third or fourth piece you grab is a piece of the fat, just to make sure everything's evenly distributed. I have the coarse die in here. That's the one with the biggest holes in it, if you're new to grinding sausage. Don't use the one with just a couple slots, that's your sausage stuffer plate. So this one, the one with the biggest holes in it, is the one you want to use right now. All right, here we go. Okay, so I got everything chilled back down to 35 degrees. Very important to try to keep everything cold. So I put the bowl and the beater in the freezer. The beer is nice and cold. Now my bowl is really only going to be able to take half of this at a time, so I'm going to divide this in half and just work with half at a time. Now I put a half a cup of beer in the whole batch. So I'm just going to add a quarter of a cup to this half. Oh, looks like about half. Okay. Now we do this. And now what we're doing here is we are trying to get it to change consistency a little bit. And what we want to do is we want to, on slow speed, beat it until it starts to bind together. You'll notice it changing, probably about a minute or so. You'll notice strings start to form between the meat. There we go, now it's starting. And that'll bind it all together, give it a nice smooth texture. You want it to almost look like a thick batter when it comes out of here. So you can see how it's kind of binding together now. I'm going to put that again into another frozen bowl. Again, keep everything as cold as you possibly can. You don't want that fat to start to melt at all. You see how it's nice and bound together now? How it looks a lot different. But you can see the fat chunks are still the fat chunks, the meat chunks are still the meat chunks. It's just much more consistent in texture and appearance. Don't worry, she keeps these counters very clean. Okay, so now we are going to taste. Here's the time when we'll adjust the spicing while we got the blender out and everything. It'll be the perfect time to either to get some more spicing in, get some more salt in, whatever we want to do. Just frying it over a little bit of peanut oil. Alrighty, and we're going to taste test it now, and we're going to see what we think and see if we want to add anything.
It's good, but if I tell you to add more spices, does that mean we get to taste test again?
No. Okay. So, hog casing. Get it at any good butcher shop, any good ethnic market. You'll want to soak it in warm water. You'll want to rinse off the salt, a little bit of it. You don't want to get rid of all the salt. Now, I want to make links that are about 8 inches long. That's what she said. So, I want to have about 4 links to a thing, which is 32 inches. Room to tie off, I'm going to go for about 36 inches. This is 12 inches, luckily. So we want about 3 links of this trivet. There we go. I'm going to tie off one end. And this should make me about 20 sausages, this recipe. So I'm going to make about 5 of these links. There's one. Coming out about right. There's 2. It's always good to have 1 or 2 short pieces as well, so that way if you end up with a little bit extra meat that's not going to fill a whole length, you can make a single. So that's what I'm doing with this one here. She's much better at tying this off than I am, but she's filming right now and doesn't really like the job, even though she's good at it. Am I wrong?
No. Ew. Ew.
Oh, no hole. Okay. Then I'll probably tie off 1 or 2 extra ones too, because that way when we thread it onto the stuffer, if we find a hole or something, we don't even have to monkey with it. That's why I always get a whole bunch extra casing, more than I need. And you don't really want to freeze this, as we found out. It gets a little bit too stuck together and things. So it's best just to buy it when you're going to make sausage, even though it's way more than you need. Like I said, it never hurts to have extra, and it's fairly cheap. So, and this is a fairly small batch. Next time, if I was going to stock this up for the winter, say, or something, I would probably make a double batch, because unfortunately we live in a place where you can't really be smoking outside for about 1/3 of the year. So and one more. Set that pile of grossness over there. This part is kind of disgusting, I gotta say. But Don't ask how the sausage is made, isn't that what the saying goes? Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so take it and thread it onto the machine once you find the opening. There we go. This is when you check for any holes or tears or anything as you're threading it on. You can kind of get a good idea. Take a good look at it. This casing's been really good so far though, so I don't think we're going to have any issues. It's important to try to keep the air out of the feed system here, because that'll just make a bubble in this. I think my next purchase is going to be a one of those hydraulic ones where you load it up and then you press it down through. I think that's going to be my next purchase. Not sure what happened there.
Missed it.
What's it? So that's the only problem is getting air in this system. It's really hard to keep out. So, like I said, I think my next purchase will be a better sausage stuffer. Almost had it. There we go. Try to pull the air out as much as we can. Work the air back, work the sausage in. Watch for it doing like that, linking itself. There we go, get the air out of it. Okay. And I'm sure she wouldn't mind if I would just fry up that last little bit for her.
Of course not. I thought you were gonna fry it up.
Don't worry, baby, I'll do so much. Okay. Before I tie this up, I'm going to try to work some of the air out as much as possible. Some of the bubbles you just have to pin after you get it done. And then we'll link it in half. These can be big ones, but that's okay. I won't say it again. Okay, so now we're gonna let those hang for a little bit while I go fire up my smoker. Okay, so my billet smoker, charcoal. You never want to use lighter fluid or fire starters or anything in a charcoal smoker because you don't want those chemicals getting in your food, and they will. So get an electric charcoal starter, or if you have a gas one, you obviously don't need this stuff. Okay, I do always put water in my pan, the water pan in my smoker. I always run water. I think it helps even out the temperature. I know a lot of people fill them with sand and things. But I like to have the water in there. I think it evens out the temperature. I have a watering can to refill that as needed. And my chips, I do not soak my wood chips. Some people do. I personally don't. I just think it cools the fire down. You have a hard enough time keeping temperature as it is. Now I'm going to let that go up to temperature. Make sure the fire stays lit. I can always shove the charcoal starter back in there if it doesn't. Right now it's looking pretty good. Okay, so we've been on for about an hour in the smoker. We're running a real good temperature, right about a solid 230, right where I want to be. I've been adding my smoking chips about every 15 minutes, and we're gonna open her up and see how they're coming along. I'm gonna check the fire first to make sure I like how that's burning. Check the level in my water pan, and then we'll open it up and take a look at the sausage. Again, fire pit gloves, best thing ever for smoking, because you can reach right in, adjust the coals a little bit, add a couple more chips in, and again, I'm dealing with like adding 2 or 3 tiny pieces of charcoal every 10 or 15 minutes. You really don't use a whole lot of charcoal in this. So now we'll open her up and we'll take a look and see how they're coming. Oh, look at that color we're getting. Nice red color in them. Smoking away nicely. Beautiful. Okay, so it's been about 2 hours. Just a couple things. Whenever you take the top off, the temperature is going to go crazy. You're going to cool everything down, but you're also going to introduce a bunch more oxygen into the system. So your fire's going to get hotter, but your whole system's going to get cooler. Going to take you a while messing around to stabilize your temperature after, but after about 15 minutes of playing with the fire and stuff, you can get it back to normal. She's been holding right at 230 here for the last about 45 minutes now. So let's open her up and check it out. Oh yeah, they're looking good now. Yeah, they're looking real good. Nice red color. Looking good. I'm going to take a temperature. We're going to be shooting for pulling these out when their internal temperature is 165. So I'm going to see where we're at. One of these. We're at 140. So we got a while to go yet. And then I'm also, I took a little piece of my extra pork shoulder here. I'm making a little pulled pork. And I'm going to wrap that at 165. That's sitting at 135. So we're in good shape. I'm just going to do a little flipping. And we'll check in another hour. Okay, so we're going to do one last temperature check. And then if they check out good, we're going to go straight into an ice bath. What that'll do is that'll keep the sausages from getting too wrinkly and shrinking up too much and maybe cracking as they cool. You want to cool them down really fast. So I'm going to go straight from there into an ice bath. We are good. Keep my pulled pork going a little bit. There we have it. We'll take one in, slice it up, and see how she looks. Very, very happy with how it looks. We got the visible pieces of fat, visible pieces of meat, some spices in there. Nice color. It's just beautiful.